People who don't reply until days later, why?
Some days I don't feel like talking to people.
It's usually because I read the message while I'm doing something that I can't reply in that moment, and then I literally just forget.
Sometimes I just don't have the energy for it. I recharge and relax by being alone and doing things that take very little effort. I'm also not on my phone a lot. I'm a university student taking full units, while working simultaneously. Skeptical smiley face.
Executive dysfunction.
I reply to them in my brain and forget to reply them in real life.
Sometimes I just truly don't know what to reply to you.
Let me think about it. I'll get back to you in a couple of.
I spend all day trying to craft the most perfect response ever, and I procrastinate it as if I'm dealing with a school assignment or something.
Ironically, it's because I often try to be thoughtful in my responses. Sometimes I will read a message and I won't have the will or time to give it the thought or depth that it requires, so I'll put it off to when I can really think about it. Oftentimes it slips my mind because my working memory is kind of trash.
I'm an introvert and it actually takes a lot of energy for me to respond to people. I much prefer talking in person to someone, but for some reason messaging drains me. It's nothing against the person I haven't responded to, and I usually tell my friends it's the way I am and they understand. So unless it's urgent, it could take me a couple of days to respond until I have the energy.
Because I don't want to.
The comments on this one should be empty until a couple of days from now.
Just because technology has gotten to the point where you can reach someone instantly does not mean that person has a responsibility to instantly because I don't want to.
People who expect immediate replies simply because they have your mobile number and can text you whenever they feel like it, why?
IDK, it's like I just can, feels overwhelming, so instead, I like to consistently go through a cycle of forgetting to respond and then chastising myself for not replying, so I decide I'll do it later, but then I forget. It's just on and on and on until I finally do, and it's always, hey. Sorry for just responding, fill in blank here, peace, thanks for the reminder, I just texted my friend who texted me back on Tuesday. This was the push I needed.
Ah yes, the infamous, I'll respond later, followed by a swift entrance into the abyss of forgetfulness.
Because honestly texting feels exhausting sometimes. Have you ever thought how before cell phones, people caught up maybe once or twice a week? I don't think it's natural to text all day, every day. Woman shrugging, light skin tone.
Or anxiety.
Yeah, this resonated with me. I've often felt that I don't have presence to engage in this conversation right now.
I like to say, I have a phone for my convenience, not.
Some people think that if you send them a text, it means you're in a place to actually talk and phone you immediately. My dad is one of those. If I wanted a conversation or had time to speak, I would have called. But I'm not, so I texted in between jobs.
That's usually my excuse, but really I find it anxiety-inducing that we're almost expected to be a text or a phone call away at all times and to respond promptly. That is why I don't.
Responds with, okay, 3 days later.
Very much this. I have so many replies bouncing around in my head.
Sometimes in the process of doing this, my brain seems to register the task as done because I've thought about it thoroughly. Then a week later I'm trying to go to sleep and remember that I never actually typed and sent the message.
Or both. Common in ADHD people. Yeah, sometimes having a phone these days feels like giving 100 people a string tied to you that they can tug on at any time for any reason to demand a response from you.
I have a special corner in my mind called unhandled and forgotten.
I'm definitely using this next time my parents give me for not answering.
Oh, I forgot about that part of my mind.
People tend to misunderstand what ADHD is, partly because the name is kind of with ADHD are perfectly capable of focusing on things. What they tend to struggle with is controlling what gets their focus. For example, I can do something that has my interest for 12h+ at a time if I'm not careful. We call it hyperfocus, and it's a common symptom of ADHD.
It's a relatively, very, new phenomenon that basically anyone in your life gets access to you at all times. It was only 20 years ago that if you left the house for the day you were actually gone. You'd return messages when you came back hours or even days later. Basically, I prefer this sometimes.
This is the most common. The second is that I find something stressful about interacting with this person. It might not even be that I don't like them, but maybe they want to discuss something I find stressful and I just don't want to deal with it with what else is going on in my day at the time. Like my mom who will ask about something career related in a text. And I just don't want to get into that kind of conversation at the moment. Love her, but yeah.
I will literally type out a whole message like 5 times because I have so much anxiety that I won't say the right thing, or what if they take it the wrong way. Constant struggle for me to send a text.
For me, as an introvert and someone with social anxiety, it drains my battery cause I try to put in care to make sure something I say in text won't come off the wrong way, since I can't convey tone. And as someone who uses a lot of sarcasm, hyperbole in their speech, I can't use that same thing in text, which makes responding through it harder. But in person those aren't problems, so it makes responding easier and less draining.
The thread is 2 hours old and has 1,200 comments. Clearly not the target audience.
What's even better is when you randomly remember and decide it's too awkward and don't respond.
Definitely. Don't get me wrong. I love cell phones for a lot of reasons. Safety alone make them pretty fantastic. Like with getting lost or needing help if something goes wrong. At the same time, I am tired of living in a world where I am expected to be reachable at any time, and if I'm not, people can get upset or feel offended. I promise that's not my intent. I'll get back to you. But I also sometimes just want to be doing my thing without distractions or obligations. The world before cell phones had a different pace that I kind of miss. There wasn't this expectation of immediacy in communication, which nowadays creates anxiety. There's something to be said about how technology and our desire for instant gratification have amplified our anxiety as people. Sometimes it's nice to unplug.
Sometimes I reply mentally and think I sent the message only to realize I only thought it and didn't complete the task.
Since smartphones took over our lives, it feels like everyone is expected to be available at all times. I just stopped caring. Unless it's an emergency, I'll answer when I want, and to act with anyone who has a problem with that.
Yeah, that's usually it. Say you'll respond after work or whatever, then get home and forget. Get too tired. A few days later it finally circles back on the conveyor belt of thought and it's like, well, now what do I do? Leading to indecisiveness that just stalls a response further.
Greater than I'm tired of living in a world where I am expected to be reachable at any time. You set that expectation by responding immediately. Don't do it. Set the expectation that you respond to texts when you're available and that it sometimes takes a day, or switching means I often disembark in the middle of conversations. People know to expect it. It's totally chat is meant * to be polite. In my mind, it implies, answer when you feel like it. Phone calls are the opposite. They say, stop what you're doing right now and talk to me.
This is me as well. It doesn't feel healthy for me to be this accessible 24/7.
Bingo. This ain't have 2, maybe 3 people I'm good with responding to immediately. And even with them sometimes I just need to be unavailable for the sake of being unavailable. We're not built to be always on like this. If you're outside of my priority circle, then I'm sorry, but I'll get back to you when I get back to you.
To add to this, as someone that experiences executive dysfunction, I'm ADHD Pi. It takes all my energy to focus on my desk job every day at work. Trying to context switch and respond to texts during the day is overwhelming and makes getting work done really hard too. Then when I finally feel I have the brain space to check my messages, I have 30 notifications. 5 are texts from automated robots that I wish I could block. 3 might be important texts. 5 are Snapchats from my close group of friends. 5 are Instagram messages that some close friends thought were funny. 3 are notifications that my Amazon packages have shipped. A couple are banking alerts for a transaction over a certain size. And the rest are notifications I could have sworn I cleared and they came back somehow. And yes, I have gone through every app and turned off notifications that I don't use. My wife helps me do this. Smartphones are just an overwhelming thing sometimes. It's not always one text that's hard to respond to in a vacuum, it's that my phone is blowing up and it's so much effort to even get started catching up on all of that.
Especially if it's just the word, hi. Responding just feels like it could be a Pandora's box that I don't know if I want to open.
I'm on this train. It's actually a recent devolution for me. I recently went to Egypt for 2 weeks. While I was there, I literally had no internet. Taking those 2 weeks really made me realize how much better I felt just reply when I could rather than instantly. I also realized this with some people I work with. They'd text me during non-working hours about work. I'd just reply during working times. So text me at 6 p.m. on a Friday, I'd reply at 9 a.m. Monday.
Yeah, I have anxiety problems as is and can go years not responding to phone calls. There's no reason in the world that phone calls, text messages and emails should show up demanding my attention while I'm on the loo playing Tetris. I hate being surprised with social demands when I'm not prepared for them.